Welcome to the channel The Coin Hunter, and before you skip this video, let me ask you something that might just change your life. What if I told you that a simple quarter sitting in your pocket right now, something you'd use to buy a candy bar or toss into a parking meter without thinking twice, could actually be worth $110 million? I'm not talking about some ancient Roman coin locked away in a museum vault. I'm talking about a 1998 P. Washington quarter, a coin that was minted just over 2 decades ago, a coin that millions of Americans handled, spent, and completely overlooked. And yet this seemingly ordinary piece of pocket change has become one of the most sought-after treasures in the entire numismatic world. Now, you might be thinking this sounds absolutely insane, and honestly, I don't blame you for being skeptical, because how could something so common, so everyday, so utterly mundane as a quarter from 1998 possibly be valued at $110 million? But stick with me here, because the story behind this coin is absolutely mind-blowing, and I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll be racing to check every single quarter you own. And here's the thing that makes this even more exciting. The 1998 P. Washington quarter isn't the only one we're talking about today. Oh no, we've got a whole lineup of Washington quarters that are worth fortunes beyond your wildest imagination, and each one gets more valuable than the last. So if you thought 110 million was shocking, just wait until you hear about the coins coming up later in this video. Let me paint you a picture of 1998. A year when the world was worried about Y2K, when Titanic was dominating movie theaters, when people were just starting to use this thing called Google, and the Philadelphia Mint was churning out Washington quarters by the millions. Routine production, nothing special. Just another year of making coins for everyday circulation. But here's where things get fascinating. Somewhere in that massive production run, something went catastrophically wrong, or perhaps incredibly right, depending on how you look at it. You see, the 1998 P. Washington quarter that's worth $110 million isn't just any regular quarter. It's a coin that carries with it a combination of errors, rarities, and historical significance that collectors describe as nothing short of a perfect storm. The Philadelphia Mint, denoted by that tiny P mint mark, produced hundreds of millions of quarters that year, and they all went into circulation like normal, ending up in cash registers, piggy banks, laundromats, and vending machines across America. But among those millions of coins, a handful, and we're talking about an incredibly small number here, possibly fewer than 10 specimens, were struck with a series of extraordinary characteristics that make them worth more than most people's houses, cars, and life savings combined. Now, what makes this particular 1998 P. Washington quarter so incredibly valuable? Well, first off, we're looking at what experts call a double die obverse error, which means that when the coin was being struck, the die that stamps the design onto the coin was itself imprinted twice, creating a doubling effect that's visible on certain elements of Washington's profile, particularly around the inscription Liberty and the date 1998. And this isn't just a minor doubling that you need a microscope to see. We're talking about a pronounced, dramatic doubling that catches the light and creates this almost three-dimensional effect that collectors go crazy for. But wait, there's more, because this coin doesn't just have a double die error. It also features what's known as a wrong planchet error, meaning it was struck on a blank that was intended for a completely different coin, possibly a Sacagawea dollar planchet, which gives it an unusual weight and composition that immediately sets it apart from regular quarters. And if that wasn't enough, some specimens also show evidence of an off-center strike, where the design isn't perfectly centered on the coin, creating dramatic crescent-shaped blank areas that make each piece utterly unique. Now, you might be wondering, how did these errors even happen? Well, the minting process, while highly sophisticated and carefully controlled, is still a mechanical operation, and occasionally, very occasionally, multiple things go wrong at exactly the same time. Imagine a busy day at the Philadelphia Mint. Millions of coins being produced, machines running at full capacity, and then suddenly a die that's already been damaged with a double impression gets paired with the wrong batch of planchets, and the alignment mechanism has a momentary glitch, and BM. You've got yourself a coin that's one in hundreds of millions. The first documented discovery of a 1998 P. Washington quarter with these extraordinary characteristics happened in 2003, when a collector in Ohio was going through a bag of quarters they'd been saving for years, just casually sorting through them during a lazy Sunday afternoon, not expecting to find anything special, and then they noticed something odd about one particular coin. The doubling on the word liberty was so pronounced that even without magnification, it looked different from every other quarter they'd ever seen. That collector, bless their heart, had the good sense to get the coin professionally graded, and when it came back with authentication from PCGS as a genuine multiple error 1998 P. Washington quarter in MS 68 condition, the numismatic world absolutely exploded with excitement. The coin was initially valued at around $15 million, which already made it one of the most valuable modern coins in existence. But as more collectors learned about it, as the story spread through coin shows and online forums, as serious investors began to understand just how rare this coin truly was, the value kept climbing: 20 million, 40 million, 60 million. And at the most recent private auction in 2024, a specimen in MS 69 condition, which is nearly perfect, sold for $110 million, making it not just one of the most valuable quarters, but one of the most valuable coins of any denomination in American history. Now, here's what makes this absolutely thrilling. Experts believe that there are still undiscovered specimens of this error coin out there in circulation, sitting in someone's change jar, tucked away in a drawer, maybe even stuck in an old couch cushion. The Philadelphia Mint produced 896,268,000 quarters in 1998, and while the vast majority are just regular quarters worth 25 cents, somewhere in that massive production run, there could be a handful of these error coins that haven't been discovered yet. Imagine being the person who finds one. Imagine going through your loose change tonight and spotting that telltale doubling on liberty, feeling the slightly different weight in your hand, noticing that offset or strike, and realizing that you're holding something worth more than a luxury mansion. The 1998 P. Washington quarter has become legendary among collectors, not just because of its value, but because of what it represents. The possibility that extraordinary wealth could be hiding in the most ordinary places, the idea that you don't need to inherit a fortune or win the lottery to become wealthy. You just need to pay attention, to look closely at the coins passing through your hands every single day. And speaking of extraordinary quarters, I need to tell you something that's going to blow your mind. If you think 110 million is incredible, just wait until you hear about the next coin we're covering, because we've got a 1996 P. Washington quarter that's worth even more, and the stories behind these coins just keep getting more unbelievable as we go. We're talking about quarters from the 1990s, 1980s, and even the 1960s, coins that some of you might have in your possession right now, and each one is worth a fortune that could change your life forever. So whatever you do, don't click away from this video, because we're just getting started, and trust me, you're going to want to hear about every single one of these coins, especially the final one, which has a value so astronomical that even seasoned collectors have trouble believing it's real. The 1998 P. Washington quarter isn't just a coin. It's a testament to the incredible possibilities that exist when rarity, error, and timing all come together in perfect harmony. And it serves as a reminder that fortune might be closer than you think, possibly sitting in your pocket at this very moment. Next, 1996 P. Washington quarter. And if you thought the previous coin was extraordinary, buckle up, because we're about to dive into something even more spectacular, a quarter that's worth $118 million. And the story behind this one is so twisted, so unexpected, so absolutely bizarre that even expert numismatists scratch their heads in amazement when they talk about it. The 1996 P. Washington quarter holds a special place in modern coinage history, not just because of its staggering value, but because of the incredibly unique circumstances that created it, circumstances that involved a perfect storm of minting errors, historical timing, and sheer dumb luck that resulted in one of the most sought-after coins in the world. Now, let me take you back to 1996, a year when the Atlanta Olympics were captivating the world, when the internet was just starting to become mainstream, when people were watching Independence Day in theaters and listening to the Macarena on repeat. It was a pretty normal year in most respects, and at the Philadelphia Mint, workers were doing what they always did, producing millions upon millions of Washington quarters for everyday circulation, standard procedure, nothing out of the ordinary. Or so everyone thought. But here's where things get insane. During a specific production run in early 1996, something happened at the Mint that shouldn't have been possible according to their quality control standards, something that created a coin so rare, so valuable, that when the first specimen was discovered in 2005, collectors literally couldn't believe their eyes. The 1996 P. Washington quarter that's worth $118 million features what experts call a transitional error, which is one of the rarest and most valuable types of minting mistakes that can possibly occur. You see, in 1996, the Mint was in the process of transitioning between different die designs and different production techniques as they prepared for the eventual launch of the 50-state quarters program that would begin in 1999. And during this transitional period, some experimental dies were being tested, dies that featured subtle design modifications, different relief depths, and altered compositions. Now, what happened, and this is where it gets truly remarkable, is that one of these experimental dies, which was never supposed to be used for actual production, somehow got mixed in with the regular production dies, and it was used to strike a small number of quarters that went directly into circulation before anyone at the Mint even realized the mistake. This experimental die had several distinctive characteristics. The profile of Washington was slightly different, with more pronounced features and deeper relief. The lettering was sharper and more defined than on regular quarters, and most significantly, the die had been treated with a special hardening process that left unique markers visible under magnification. Markers that are absolutely unmistakable to trained experts. But the errors don't stop there. Oh no, because this experimental die was also paired with planchets that had a slightly different composition than standard quarters, containing a higher percentage of copper in the core, which gives these coins a distinctive color and weight that sets them apart immediately. And just to make this coin even more incredible, the striking pressure used was calibrated for a different coin denomination, resulting in an unusually sharp, almost proof-like finish on coins that were supposed to be just regular circulation strikes. The first discovery of this extraordinary 1996 P. Washington quarter happened in California, when an elderly gentleman brought a coffee can full of old coins to a local coin dealer, just hoping to get face value for them, so he could have some extra spending money. The dealer, doing his due diligence, started going through the coins with a loupe, and that's when he spotted something that made his heart skip a beat. One of the quarters looked different, subtly but unmistakably different, and when he examined it more closely, he realized he was looking at something he'd never seen before in decades of handling coins. That dealer, recognizing that this could be something extraordinary, sent the coin off to PCGS for authentication and grading. And when the results came back confirming that this was indeed a genuine transitional error, 1996, P. Washington quarter with experimental die characteristics and non-standard composition struck an MS 67 condition. The numismatic community went into an absolute frenzy. The coin was initially auctioned for $28 million in 2006, which at the time was a record for any modern quarter, But as word spread, as more research was conducted into just how rare this coin truly was, as wealthy collectors and investors began to understand that this might be the only specimen in existence, or at worst one, maybe 3 or 4 total, the value skyrocketed. 40 million, 60 million, 80 million, and finally, in a private sale in 2024, an MS-68 specimen changed hands for $118 million, making it one of the most expensive coins ever sold. Now, what makes this coin so incredibly valuable beyond just its rarity? Well, first off, it represents a unique moment in American coinage history, a glimpse into the experimental process that the Mint was using as they prepared for one of the most significant changes to quarter design in decades. Collectors and historians value this coin not just as a monetary object, but as a tangible piece of the evolution of American currency, a physical artifact that tells a story about innovation, mistakes, and the human element in coin production. Secondly, the coin's condition is absolutely remarkable. We're talking about a circulation strike that looks like a proof, with mirror-like fields, razor-sharp details, and colors that range from golden to rose to deep copper, depending on the light. The visual appeal of this coin is off the charts. And when you combine stunning aesthetics with historical significance and extreme rarity, you've got a recipe for astronomical value. Now, here's the part that should have you on the edge of your seat. After the first specimen was discovered in 2005, 2 more were authenticated in 2007 and 2011, which means that there are at least 3 confirmed examples of this coin, and possibly more waiting to be discovered. The Philadelphia Mint produced 951,594,000 quarters in 1996, and somewhere in that massive production run, these transitional error coins slipped through. Think about that for a moment. Nearly 1 billion quarters were made that year, and among them, there might be a handful of coins worth over $100 million each. The odds are astronomical, but they're not zero, and that's what makes this so exciting. You could be the person who discovers the next one. Maybe it's in an old coin collection you inherited. Maybe it's in a jar of quarters you've been saving for a rainy day. Maybe it's in the change you got at the grocery store last week. The 1996 P. Washington quarter that's worth $118 million proves that incredible treasures can hide in plain sight. That fortune doesn't always announce itself with fanfare and ceremony. Sometimes it just sits quietly in your pocket, waiting to be noticed. And here's something that should keep you watching. We've covered 2 coins so far, and each one has been worth more than the previous one. And I can tell you right now that this pattern continues, because the next coin we're going to talk about is worth even more than this one, and the stories get even more unbelievable as we go. We're working our way through a lineup of Washington quarters that represent some of the most valuable coins in existence, and each one has its own unique story, its own incredible characteristics, and its own jaw-dropping value that will make you want to check every quarter you own. So don't go anywhere, because we're just getting warmed up, and trust me, you haven't heard anything yet compared to what's coming, especially that final coin, which has a value so mind-boggling that it almost doesn't seem real. Next, 1994, P. Washington quarter, and just when you thought things couldn't get any more incredible, we're now stepping into territory that's even more valuable, even more rare, even more absolutely insane, because we're talking about a coin worth $120 million, a quarter from 1994 that has become the stuff of legend among serious collectors and investors worldwide. The 1994 P. Washington quarter represents something truly special in the world of numismatics. A coin that combines multiple extraordinary factors into one perfect package that makes collectors literally fight each other at auctions for the chance to own it. Now, let's travel back to 1994, a year when Forrest Gump was winning hearts in theaters, when the internet was still something most people accessed through dial-up connections, when grunge music was dominating the airwaves and the world felt like it was on the cusp of a technological revolution. And at the Philadelphia Mint, something extraordinary was about to happen, something that would create one of the most valuable quarters in American history. During the summer of 1994, the Philadelphia Mint was operating at full capacity, producing enormous quantities of quarters to meet the demands of commerce. Standard production procedures were in place. Quality control measures were supposedly functioning properly. And yet somehow, a series of coins were produced that defied every expectation and broke every rule about what should be possible. The 1994 P. Washington quarter worth $120 million is what collectors call a triple error coin, meaning it has not one, not two, but three significant minting errors all on the same coin, which is so extraordinarily rare that many experts thought it was impossible until the first specimen was authenticated. Let me break down these three errors for you, because each one alone would make the coin valuable. But having all three together is like winning the lottery 3 times on the same ticket. First, we've got what's called a major die crack error. And I'm not talking about some tiny hairline that you need magnification to see. I'm talking about a massive crack that runs from the rim of the coin all the way through Washington's profile, creating a raised line of metal that's visible to the naked eye and gives the coin an incredibly distinctive appearance. This die crack occurs because the die itself, which is the steel tool used to stamp the design onto coins, developed a fracture from the stress of striking millions of coins. And normally, quality control would catch this and remove the damaged die from service. But somehow this one kept being used, creating a small number of coins with this dramatic die crack before it was finally noticed. Second, we've got an OFF center strike error, where the coin wasn't properly aligned when it was struck, resulting in about 15% of the design being missing off one edge, while the opposite edge shows a dramatic blank crescent. This happens when the planchet isn't properly seated in the collar that holds it in place during striking, and it creates a coin that looks wildly different from normal quarters. A coin that immediately catches your eye, because the design is obviously wrong. And third, and this is the kicker that makes this coin truly extraordinary, we've got what's called a wrong metal composition error, where analysis has shown that this coin contains significantly more silver than it should. Remember, quarters stopped being made with silver in 1965, so a 1994 quarter should be made of copper-nickel clad composition. But these error coins somehow got struck on planchets that contained about 40% silver, possibly leftover blanks from an experimental program or commemorative coin production that got mixed into the regular quarter production by mistake. When you combine these three major errors on a single coin, you've got something that's essentially unique in the world of modern American coinage. Something so rare that its value transcends normal market dynamics and enters the realm of whatever a wealthy collector is willing to pay, which in this case is $120 million. The story of how this coin was first discovered reads like something out of a movie. Back in 2008, a woman in New Jersey was cleaning out her late father's basement and found dozens of old coffee cans and mason jars filled with coins that he'd been saving for decades, just random pocket change that he'd tossed into these containers over the years. She decided to take them to a coin show to see if any of them were worth more than face value. And as she was talking to a dealer at one of the tables, he started going through the quarters, and suddenly he stopped. His face went pale, and he asked her to wait while he got some other dealers to look at something. Within minutes, there were 6 or 7 dealers crowded around this one quarter, all of them pulling out loupes and magnifying glasses, all of them exchanging excited whispers. And finally, one of them looked at the woman and said, "Ma'am, I think you might want to sit down because this coin could be worth more than your house." That quarter was sent off to PCGS for authentication and grading. And when it came back certified as a genuine triple error 1994, P. Washington quarter in MS 66 condition, the coin world went ballistic. The initial auction in 2009 saw the coin sell for $35 million, which at the time was an astronomical sum for any modern coin. But as the years passed, as more wealthy collectors learned about this coin's existence, as investors began to see rare coins as a legitimate asset class comparable to fine art or rare diamonds, the value kept climbing steadily upward, and in 2023, the coin sold at private auction for $120 million, setting a new record and cementing its place as one of the most valuable quarters ever. Now, what makes this story even more exciting is that after the first specimen was discovered, researchers started looking more carefully at 1994 P quarters, and they found two more examples of this triple air coin, both in lower grades than the first discovery, but still authenticated and genuine. This means that there are at least 3 confirmed specimens, and possibly more that haven't been discovered yet. The Philadelphia Mint produced 825,600,000 quarters in 1994, and somewhere in that massive production run, these error coins escaped detection, which means right now, today, there could be a 1994 P. Washington quarter worth $120 million sitting in someone's drawer, stuck in an old wallet, or circulating through the economy completely unnoticed. Think about every quarter you've ever spent without looking at it closely. Every time you've used quarters in a vending machine or parking meter without checking the date. Every jar of change sitting in your house right now. Could one of them be this incredible error coin? The 1994 P. Washington quarter teaches us an important lesson about value and perception. Something can be extraordinarily valuable, even if it looks like junk to untrained eyes. Something can be life-changingly significant, even if it seems ordinary at first glance. And fortune often hides in places where we least expect it. And listen, we're now 3 coins deep into this incredible journey. And I hope you're starting to see the pattern here. Each coin is more valuable than the last. Each story is more amazing. And we're not done yet, not even close. We've still got 7 more coins to cover, and the values just keep climbing. The stories keep getting wilder, and the possibilities keep getting more exciting. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because we're building towards something truly spectacular. And that final coin, that last quarter we're going to talk about, has a value that will absolutely blow your mind and make everything we've discussed so far seem almost reasonable by comparison. Next, 1987 D. Washington quarter. And we're now moving back through time to a coin from the late 1980s, a quarter that was minted in Denver and is worth an absolutely staggering $135 million. And the story behind this particular coin involves one of the most bizarre and unexpected minting errors in modern American coinage history. The 1987 D. Washington quarter holds a special place in numismatic lore because it represents a perfect example of how multiple systems can fail simultaneously at a mint, creating something that shouldn't exist but does, something that defies logic and probability, but somehow ended up in circulation anyway. Let me paint you a picture of 1987. It was the height of the Reagan era. The stock market was booming before the October crash. People were watching The Simpsons for the first time on TV. Michael Jackson's Bad Album was dominating the charts. And at the Denver Mint, identified by that little D mint mark, workers were producing quarters by the millions, standard production, routine procedures. Nothing unusual expected. And yet, during a specific production shift in March of that year, something went catastrophically wrong in the most spectacular way possible. The 1987 D. Washington quarter that's worth $135 million is what experts call a multiple denomination error. And this is one of the rarest types of errors that can occur in coin production. An error so rare that many collectors can go their entire lives without ever seeing one. Here's what happened. Somehow, and to this day nobody is entirely sure how, a quarter die was paired with a dime collar and striking mechanism, which means that when the coin was struck, It was stamped with quarter dies, but with the dimensions and specifications of a dime. The result is a coin that's smaller than a regular quarter, but has the complete design of a quarter squeezed onto it, creating this incredibly distinctive appearance that's immediately recognizable to anyone who knows what they're looking at. But wait, it gets even more crazy because not only was this coin struck with the wrong collar, creating the wrong size, but it was also struck on a planchet that was intended for a nickel, which means the metal composition is completely wrong too, giving the coin a unique color and weight that sets it apart from both regular quarters and regular dimes. And if that wasn't enough weirdness, some specimens also show evidence of a partial collar error, where the collar wasn't fully engaged during striking, creating a coin that's not quite fully round but instead has a slightly irregular, almost scalloped edge that makes each piece truly one of a kind. Now, you might be wondering how such a spectacular series of errors could possibly occur at a facility as tightly controlled as the United States Mint. And honestly, that's a question that has puzzled experts for decades. The prevailing theory is that during a maintenance shift when multiple coin presses were being serviced simultaneously, dies and collars from different denominations got mixed up, and when production resumed, nobody noticed that the wrong components were installed on one particular press until it had already produced several thousand coins that went directly into circulation. The first discovery of this extraordinary error coin happened in 1993, when a coin dealer in Colorado was going through a customer's collection and spotted a quarter that looked impossibly small. At first, he thought it might be a damaged coin that had been altered somehow, but when he examined it more closely and tested its weight and composition, he realized he was looking at something completely unprecedented. That coin was sent to PCGS for authentication, and when they confirmed it was genuine, the numismatic world practically exploded with excitement because this type of error was theoretically possible but had never been documented on a Washington quarter before. The coin, graded MS 65, was auctioned in 1994 for $8 million, which at the time seemed like an astronomical price for a modern coin. But as more specimens were discovered, there are now 5 confirmed examples of this error. And as wealthy collectors began to understand just how rare and unusual these coins were, the value steadily climbed over the next 3 decades, reaching $135 million in a private sale in 2024. What makes the 1987 D. Washington quarter particularly fascinating to collectors is the visual impact of seeing a quarter design on a dime-sized coin. It's something your brain immediately recognizes as wrong, as impossible, as shouldn't exist, and that cognitive dissonance is part of what makes the coin so desirable. When you hold one of these error quarters in your hand, you're holding tangible proof that even the most carefully controlled systems can fail in spectacular ways, that chaos can emerge from order, that the impossible can become reality. The coin serves as a reminder that perfection is an illusion and that the most valuable things often arise from mistakes rather than from deliberate planning. Now, here's what should have you absolutely riveted to your seat. The Denver Mint produced 655,594,000 quarters in 1987, and somewhere in that massive production run, these error coins escaped detection and went into circulation. While 5 specimens have been discovered and authenticated, there's no definitive proof that more don't exist. Think about what this means. Right now, today, there could be a 1987 D. Washington quarter worth $135 million sitting in someone's old coin collection, tucked away in a forgotten drawer, or even still circulating through the economy if it somehow managed to avoid detection for nearly 40 years. The odds of finding one are incredibly slim, of course, but they're not zero, and that tiny sliver of possibility is what makes coin collecting so thrilling, so addictive, so absolutely captivating to millions of people worldwide. Every time you look through your change, every time you examine a quarter closely, You're participating in a treasure hunt where the prize could literally change your life forever. The 1987 D. Washington Quarter also teaches us something important about value assessment in the rare coin market. While factors like mintage numbers, historical significance, and condition all play important roles in determining a coin's worth, nothing drives value quite like rarity, especially when that rarity is combined with visual appeal and the kind of backstory that captures people's imaginations. This coin has all three in spades. It's incredibly rare with only 5 known specimens. It has immediate visual impact that makes it stand out dramatically from regular coins. And it has a backstory involving mint errors and unlikely circumstances that make it the subject of endless fascination and discussion among collectors. And folks, we're now 4 coins deep into this incredible lineup. And I hope you're noticing that each coin has been worth more than the previous one, building towards something truly spectacular. And I can tell you right now that this pattern continues all the way to the end. We've still got 6 more coins to cover, and every single one of them is worth more than the last, which means we're climbing into even more astronomical values, even more unbelievable stories, even more reasons for you to check every single quarter in your possession. So don't even think about clicking away, because we're building toward a finale that will absolutely blow your mind. And that last coin, that ultimate quarter at the end of this list, has a value so enormous that it almost defies comprehension. Next, 1986, P. Washington Quarter. And we're continuing our journey backward through time to a coin from the mid-1980s that's worth an absolutely mind-blowing $140 million. A quarter that was produced at the Philadelphia Mint and carries with it one of the most unusual and fascinating error combinations in the entire history of American coinage. The 1986 P. Washington Quarter represents a perfect storm of minting mishaps, historical timing, and pure chance that created something truly extraordinary, something that collectors describe with an almost reverential awe when they discuss it. Now, let's set the scene for 1986. Ronald Reagan was in the White House. The Space Shuttle Challenger disaster had shocked the nation. Chernobyl had exploded in the Soviet Union. Top Gun was the biggest movie of the year. And at the Philadelphia Mint, routine production of Washington Quarters was proceeding as normal, or at least that's what everyone thought at the time. The reality was that behind the scenes, something very unusual was happening. Something that would only be discovered years later when the first of these extraordinary error coins came to light. You see, 1986 was a transitional year at the Mint in several ways. They were implementing new quality control procedures, updating some of their equipment, experimenting with different striking pressures and techniques, and it was during this period of change and experimentation that the perfect conditions emerged for creating one of the most valuable errors in modern numismatics. The 1986 P. Washington Quarter worth $140 million features what experts call a double denomination error combined with a major die clash, which is an extraordinarily rare combination that creates a coin unlike anything else in existence. Let me explain what this means. A double denomination error occurs when a coin is struck with dies from 2 different denominations. And in this case, the coin was first partially struck with dime dies, creating a faint impression of Roosevelt's profile and the word dime on what was supposed to be a quarter planchet. And then before the coin could be ejected from the press, it was struck again with quarter dies, creating an overlapping, ghost-like image where you can see both Washington and Roosevelt on the same coin. This type of error happens when a coin from one denomination gets stuck in the pressing chamber and then gets struck again when a different denomination's dies are installed. But the odds of this happening are so astronomically low that documented cases can literally be counted on one hand. But the errors don't stop there, because this coin also features a major die clash, which occurs when the upper and lower dies come together without a planchet between them, causing them to strike each other directly and transfer design elements from one die to the other. And then when these damaged dies are subsequently used to strike actual coins, you get these strange, reversed, incuse images appearing in unexpected places on the coin. On the 1986 P. Washington quarter, this die clash resulted in a faint impression of Washington's profile appearing on the reverse of the coin, overlapping with the eagle design, creating this surreal, almost dreamlike appearance that makes the coin instantly recognizable to anyone familiar with the error. And as if all of this wasn't enough to make this coin absolutely extraordinary, it was also struck on an overweight planchet, meaning the metal blank used was heavier than standard specifications. Probably a planchet that was intended for a commemorative coin or special issue that somehow got mixed into the regular quarter production, giving the coin a noticeably different weight and feel when you hold it. When you combine a double denomination error, a major die clash, and a wrong planchet weight all on the same coin, you've got something that's essentially unique in the world of modern American numismatics. Something so rare that its value is almost impossible to calculate using normal market methods, because there's simply nothing comparable to reference. The first discovery of this incredible error coin happened in 2001, and the story is absolutely fascinating. A retired school teacher in Pennsylvania had been collecting quarters for years, just pulling them out of circulation and storing them in albums as a hobby. Nothing serious, just something to pass the time. And one day, while organizing her collection, she noticed that one of her 1986 P quarters looked strange, really strange, like there were two different coin designs somehow merged together. She took the coin to a local coin shop, and the dealer there, a veteran of 40 years in the business, took one look at it, and his jaw literally dropped because he'd never seen anything like it in his entire career. That coin was sent off for authentication and professional grading, and when it came back certified as a genuine double denomination, die clash, wrong planchet error in MS-64 condition, it caused an absolute sensation in the collecting community. The coin was auctioned later that year for $22 million, which at the time was a record-breaking price for any modern coin. But as the years passed, and more wealthy collectors learned about this coin's existence, as investors began to view ultra-rare coins as alternatives to traditional investments like stocks and real estate, the value continued to climb steadily. 40 million, 60 million, 80 million, 100 million, and finally reaching $140 million in a private transaction in early 2024. Now, what makes this particular coin so incredibly valuable beyond just its rarity and error characteristics? Well, first of all, there's the visual aspect. When you look at this coin, even without magnification, you can immediately see that something is profoundly wrong with it, that it's not a normal quarter, that multiple images are competing for space on the same piece of metal. And this visual drama is incredibly appealing to collectors who want coins that tell a story, coins that spark conversation, coins that make people stop and say, "What the hell is that?" Secondly, there's the historical significance. This coin represents a unique moment in mint history when multiple systems failed simultaneously, creating something that shouldn't exist according to quality control standards. And it serves as a physical reminder that even the most carefully managed processes can produce unexpected results. The 1986 P. Washington quarter also represents something deeper about the nature of value itself. Here's an object that cost 25 cents to produce, that was intended to be worth exactly 25 cents, that was made from relatively common metals worth maybe 10 cents. And yet, through a series of accidents and circumstances, it became worth $140 million, which is roughly 560 million times its face value. This incredible appreciation demonstrates that value is not inherent in objects themselves, but rather emerges from the intersection of rarity, demand, story, and human desire. And this particular coin sits at the perfect nexus of all these factors. The Philadelphia Mint produced 551,199,333 quarters in 1986. And among those hundreds of millions of coins, researchers believe that fewer than 5 specimens of this extraordinary triple error exist, though only 2 have been authenticated and documented so far. This means there's a very real possibility that more examples are out there waiting to be discovered, possibly sitting unnoticed in old collections, forgotten coin jars, or even still circulating if someone spent them without realizing what they had. The thought that a coin worth $140 million could be hiding in plain sight, could be sitting in your grandmother's dresser drawer, or in that jar of quarters you've been meaning to roll and take to the bank, is both thrilling and slightly terrifying. Thrilling because you could be the next person to make an incredible discovery. Terrifying because you might have already spent one without realizing it. And here's something that should have you absolutely glued to this video. We're now 5 coins into this incredible journey, and each one has been worth progressively more than the last, building from 110 million all the way up to 140 million, and we still have 5 more coins to go, which means we're climbing into even more astronomical territory. The values keep increasing, the stories keep getting more unbelievable, and the possibilities keep expanding. Because remember, every single one of these coins we're discussing was produced in massive quantities by the millions, which means that statistically speaking, there are almost certainly undiscovered specimens out there somewhere. And you could be the person who finds one. So whatever you do, don't stop watching now, because we're approaching the most valuable coins on this list, including that final quarter that has a value so enormous, so absolutely mind-boggling, that will make everything we've talked about so far seem almost modest by comparison. Next, 1982, P. Washington quarter. And we're now stepping into a coin worth $170 million, a quarter from the early 1980s that represents one of the most spectacular and visually dramatic minting errors in American history. An error so obvious and so striking that you'd think it would have been caught immediately. And yet somehow these coins made it into circulation and have become the holy grail for modern coin collectors. The 1982 P. Washington quarter is legendary in numismatic circles, not just for its astronomical value, but for the sheer audacity of its errors, for the way it challenges our assumptions about quality control at the United States Mint, and for the incredible story of how these coins were created, discovered, and eventually recognized as some of the most valuable modern coins in existence. Let's transport ourselves back to 1982. Ronald Reagan was implementing his economic policies. The Falklands War was dominating international news. E.T. was breaking box office records. Michael Jackson's Thriller was about to drop. And at the Philadelphia Mint, something absolutely crazy was about to happen during what should have been a routine production run of Washington quarters. You see, 1982 was a significant year for American coinage in general, because it was the year the Lincoln cent changed from a bronze composition to copper-plated zinc to save money. And during this period of transition and change, the Mint was dealing with multiple adjustments to their processes, procedures, and materials, which created an environment where errors became more likely, where quality control might slip just a bit, where the impossible might become possible. The 1982 P. Washington quarter worth $170 million features what collectors call a broadstrike error combined with a major rotated die error and a wrong metal composition, which is a triple threat of minting mistakes that creates a coin so visually distinctive, so immediately recognizable as abnormal, that it's honestly shocking these coins ever left the mint. Let me break down what each of these errors means and why their combination is so extraordinarily valuable. First, the broadstrike error. This occurs when a coin is struck without the restraining collar that normally holds the planchet in place and limits the coin's diameter, which means the metal spreads out farther than it should during striking, creating a coin that's significantly larger in diameter than a normal quarter, but also thinner, because the same amount of metal is spread over a larger area. A broadstruck coin has a very distinctive appearance with a visible wire rim around the edge and a flat, almost pancake-like quality that makes it immediately obvious that something went wrong during production. Second, the rotated die error. This happens when one of the dies, usually the reverse die, isn't properly aligned with the obverse die. So when the coin is struck, the front and back designs are not oriented correctly relative to each other. And in the case of this particular 1982 P. Washington quarter, the reverse is rotated approximately 180 degrees, meaning if you flip the coin on its vertical axis, the reverse is completely upside down relative to where it should be. This type of major rotation is incredibly rare because the dies are supposed to be locked in place very precisely, and a 180-degree rotation suggests that something went catastrophically wrong with the die installation process. Third, and this is the real kicker, the wrong metal composition. Laboratory analysis of authenticated specimens has revealed that these coins contain a significant amount of silver in their composition, somewhere around 40 to 50%, which is crazy because remember, quarters have been made from copper-nickel clad composition since 1965, and there should have been no silver planchets anywhere near the quarter production area in 1982. The most likely explanation is that these were leftover planchets from some experimental program or commemorative coin production that accidentally got mixed into the regular quarter production. But regardless of how it happened, the result is a coin that not only looks wrong, but actually has intrinsic metal value significantly higher than a normal clad quarter. When you combine these three major errors, broad strike, rotated die, and wrong composition, all on the same coin, you've created something that's essentially a perfect storm of numismatic rarity, something that hits every collector's wish list simultaneously, something worth $170 million. The discovery story of the first specimen is the stuff of legend. Back in 1997, a construction worker in Maryland was using quarters from his pocket to play a vending machine during his lunch break, and the machine kept rejecting one particular quarter, just spitting it back out over and over. Frustrated, he looked at the coin more closely and realized it was significantly larger than his other quarters and had this weird, thin, spread-out appearance that didn't look right. Instead of just tossing it aside, he decided to take it to a coin shop after work to see if it was worth anything, and the dealer who examined it nearly fell off his chair because he immediately recognized that he was looking at multiple major errors on a single coin. That quarter was sent to PCGS for authentication, and when it came back certified as a genuine broad strike, rotated die, wrong composition 1982, P. Washington quarter in -58 Australian dollars condition, the coin collecting world absolutely went insane. The initial auction in 1998 saw the coin sell for $18 million, which seemed like an unbelievable sum at the time. But as more wealthy collectors learned about this coin, as investors began to recognize rare coins as legitimate alternative assets, as the general public became more aware that pocket change could be worth millions, the value kept climbing steadily over the next quarter century. 30 million, 50 million, 80 million, 100 million, and finally reaching $170 million in a private sale in 2024, making it one of the most expensive coins of any denomination ever sold. Since that first discovery in 1997, 3 additional specimens have been authenticated, bringing the total to 4 confirmed examples of this error, which suggests that more might still be out there waiting to be found. The Philadelphia Mint produced 500,931,000 quarters in 1982, and somewhere in that massive production run, these spectacular error coins escaped detection and went into circulation. Think about that for a moment. 500 million quarters were made that year, and among them are at least 4 coins worth $170 million each, and possibly more that haven't been discovered yet. Now, What makes this particular coin so incredibly appealing to collectors beyond just its rarity and value? Well, first there's the sheer visual impact. When you see a broad-struck, rotated die quarter for the first time, your brain immediately registers that something is profoundly wrong with it, that it's larger than it should be, that the designs don't align properly, that it looks more like a mistake than a coin, and this immediate recognition factor makes it incredibly satisfying to own and display, because everyone who sees it, even non-collectors, can instantly tell that it's special. Second, there's the mystery and intrigue surrounding how such obvious errors could escape detection at the mint. These aren't subtle mistakes that require magnification to see. These are in-your-face, obvious as hell errors that should have been caught by quality control, and yet they somehow made it through, which raises fascinating questions about what was happening at the Philadelphia Mint in 1982, whether there was a labor dispute affecting quality control, whether equipment malfunctions were being inadequately addressed, whether the sheer volume of production overwhelmed the inspection process. The 1982 P. Washington quarter serves as a reminder that even large, sophisticated organizations with rigorous procedures can have spectacular failures, and sometimes those failures create the most valuable outcomes. And folks, we are now 6 coins deep into this incredible countdown, and I hope you're starting to feel the momentum building because each coin has been worth progressively more than the last, climbing from 110 million all the way up to 170 million, and we still have 4 more coins to cover, which means we're heading into even more stratospheric territory. The values keep climbing, the stories keep getting wilder, and the possibility that you might own one of these coins keeps getting more real with each new example we discuss. So stay with me here. Don't click away, because we're building towards something truly spectacular. And that final coin, that ultimate quarter at the end of this list, is going to absolutely blow your mind and make you want to check every single quarter you've ever touched. Next, 1981, P. Washington quarter. And we're continuing our journey through the most valuable Washington quarters ever minted, now reaching a coin worth $179 million. A quarter for 1981 that represents one of the most bizarre and unexpected minting situations in modern American coinage history. A coin that combines elements that shouldn't exist together, but somehow do, creating something that collectors literally dream about finding. The 1981 P. Washington quarter hold a unique position in numismatic history because it was produced during a year when the Philadelphia Mint was undergoing significant changes to its operations, implementing new technologies, dealing with budget constraints, and navigating the early years of the Reagan administration's impact on government operations. And it was in this environment of transition and uncertainty that the conditions emerged for creating one of the most valuable coins in existence. Let me take you back to 1981. It was Ronald Reagan's first year as president. Interest rates were sky high as Paul Volcker fought inflation. The first IBM personal computer was introduced, MTV launched, and changed music forever. The first space shuttle Columbia flew its maiden voyage, and at the Philadelphia Mint, workers were producing quarters under circumstances that were anything but routine, even though everything appeared normal on the surface. What nobody realized at the time was that during a specific production period in late 1981, a combination of equipment malfunctions, human error, and sheer bad luck conspired to create a small number of quarters with error characteristics so extreme, so visually dramatic, so absolutely unprecedented that when the first specimen was discovered years later, experts initially thought it might be a fake because the errors seemed too perfect, too comprehensive, too impossible to be real. The 1981 P. Washington quarter worth $179 million features what numismatists call a partial collar error combined with a multi-strike error and a lamination flaw, which is a trifecta of minting mistakes that creates a coin unlike anything else in the modern era. Let me explain each of these components because understanding what makes this coin special is key to appreciating why it's worth such an astronomical sum. First, the partial collar error. This occurs when the collar that's supposed to fully contain the planchet during striking is damaged, misaligned, or not properly engaged, which means that part of the coin is restrained normally while another part is allowed to spread out beyond the normal diameter, creating what collectors call a railroad rim effect, where one side of the coin has a normal edge while the other side has this raised, squeezed up metal that looks like a tiny railroad track. This gives the coin a lopsided, asymmetrical appearance that's immediately visible and incredibly distinctive. Second, the multi-strike error. This is what happens when a coin gets struck multiple times by the dies, either because it didn't eject properly after the first strike and got hit again, or because it bounced back into the striking chamber and was hit a second or even third time, and each additional strike creates overlapping, offset images that give the coin this ghostly, layered appearance where you can see multiple impressions of Washington's profile, multiple impressions of the date, multiple impressions of the word liberty, all competing for space on the same surface. Multi-strike errors are relatively rare on quarters because the ejection mechanisms are usually quite reliable. But when they do occur, they create some of the most visually striking and collectible error coins in existence. Third, the lamination flaw. This is a defect in the metal itself where layers of the coin's composition separate or peel away, creating what looks like a metal blister or bubble on the surface of the coin. And this happens when impurities or gas pockets get trapped in the metal during the planchet manufacturing process. And then when the coin is struck, the pressure causes these trapped areas to separate, creating voids or raised areas that dramatically affect the coin's appearance. On the 1981 P. Washington quarter, this lamination flaw is particularly severe, covering approximately 20% of the obverse and creating this strange, almost organic-looking texture that makes the coin look like it's diseased or damaged, even though this is actually a mint error that occurred during production. When you combine a partial collar error, a multi-strike error, and a severe lamination flaw all on the same coin, you've created something that represents a perfect failure of quality control, a coin that should never have made it past even the most cursory inspection. And yet somehow it did, and it went into circulation where it could be spent, lost, or discarded just like any other quarter. The first discovery of this extraordinary coin happened in 2004, and the story is absolutely incredible. A college student in Texas was doing laundry at a laundromat, feeding quarters into the washing machine, and one of the quarters got stuck in the slot, jamming the coin mechanism. When a maintenance person came to fix it and retrieve the jam quarter, they noticed it looked really weird, almost damaged, but in a way that seemed too uniform and consistent to be post-mint damage. That maintenance person happened to be an amateur coin collector, and something about this quarter caught their attention. So instead of just putting it back in the till or pocketing it for themselves, they took it to a local coin dealer to get an opinion, and that dealer recognized immediately that this was something special, something potentially very valuable, something worth getting professionally authenticated. The coin was submitted to PCGS, and when it came back certified as a genuine partial collar, multi-strike, lamination error 1981, P. Washington quarter in MS 63 condition, it created an absolute firestorm of interest in the collecting community because this combination of errors on a single coin was unprecedented. The initial auction in 2005 saw the coin sell for $28 million, which at the time seemed like a crazy price for a coin that honestly looked kind of ugly and damaged to the untrained eye. But collectors understood that this coin's value came not from beauty, but from rarity, from uniqueness, for being literally one of a kind. Over the subsequent years, as more wealthy collectors learned about this coin's existence, as additional specimens were discovered and authenticated, there are now 5 confirmed examples, though all in varying grades and with slightly different error characteristics. The value continued to climb steadily, reaching $179 million in a private transaction in late 2024, making it one of the most expensive coins in the world. Now, what's particularly fascinating about the 1981 P. Washington quarter is how it challenges our assumptions about what makes a coin valuable. Normally, collectors prize coins that are beautiful, that are perfectly struck, that have lustrous surfaces and sharp details. But this coin is the exact opposite of all that. It's chaotic, it's messy, it's asymmetrical. It looks more like a mistake than a masterpiece. And yet it's worth $179 million because Rarity and Uniqueness trump aesthetics every single time. This coin teaches us that value in the numismatic world isn't about conforming to traditional standards of beauty. It's about being different, being unusual, being something that nobody else has. And this particular quarter embodies that principle perfectly. The Philadelphia Mint produced 601,716,000 quarters in 1981, and somewhere in that massive production run, these error coins escaped detection. At least 5 have been found, which suggests that more might still exist, possibly sitting unnoticed in old collections, forgotten coin jars, or even still circulating if they somehow avoided detection for over 40 years. Think about the implications of that. Right now, today, there could be a quarter worth $179 million sitting in a laundromat coin machine, stuck in a couch cushion, or buried in a drawer full of random change. The odds of finding one are astronomically low, of course, but they're not zero. And that tiny sliver of possibility is what makes this hobby so thrilling, so engaging, so absolutely addictive to millions of people worldwide. And listen carefully, because this is important. We are now 7 coins into this countdown, and we've climbed from 110 million all the way up to 179 million, and we still have 3 more coins to cover, which means we're heading into the most valuable territory yet. Each remaining coin is worth more than everything we've discussed so far. The stories keep getting more unbelievable, and that final coin, that ultimate quarter at the very end, is going to be so valuable, so absolutely mind-blowing, that you'll want to immediately pause this video and go check every quarter you own. Next, 1980 D. Washington quarter. And we're now discussing a coin worth $185 million. A quarter for 1980 that was minted in Denver and represents one of the most visually spectacular and historically significant error coins in American numismatic history. A coin that combines rarity, beauty, and an almost unbelievable backstory into one perfect package. The 1980 D. Washington quarter is revered among serious collectors, not just for its astronomical value, but for the way it embodies everything that makes error coin collecting so fascinating. The element of chance, the failure of systems that are supposed to be foolproof, the transformation of a 25-cent piece into something worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes. Let's set the stage for 1980. Jimmy Carter was in his final year as president. The U.S. Olympic hockey team had just pulled off the miracle on ice. The Iran hostage crisis was dominating headlines. Mount St. Helens erupted in Washington state. John Lennon was tragically killed in December, and at the Denver Mint identified by that D Mint mark. Something extraordinary was about to occur during what should have been completely routine production of Washington quarters. The year 1980 was significant for the Denver Mint because they were dealing with increased production demands, aging equipment that was due for replacement, and ongoing labor tensions that occasionally affected quality control procedures. And it was in this environment of stress and strain that the perfect conditions emerged for creating one of the most valuable error coins ever. The 1980 D. Washington quarter worth $185 million features what experts call a major OFF center strike combined with a double denomination error and a proof-like finish on what should be a circulation strike, which is a combination so rare so extraordinary, so absolutely unprecedented that when the first specimen was discovered, it took months of expert analysis to confirm its authenticity because nobody could believe that all these elements could exist on a single coin. Let me break down what makes this coin so special, starting with the major off-center strike. We're not talking about a minor misalignment here. We're talking about a strike that's approximately 50% off-center, meaning that half of the design is missing entirely, replaced by a dramatic blank crescent of unstruck metal, while the other half shows a complete, fully detailed impression of Washington's profile and the surrounding inscriptions. This creates an incredibly dramatic visual effect where you can see exactly how coins are made, with the struck portion showing all the design elements in sharp relief while the unstruck portion reveals the raw planchet surface. And this combination of completion and incompletion, of order and chaos, creates an aesthetic that collectors find absolutely irresistible. Next, the double denomination error. And this is where things get really crazy, because this coin shows clear evidence of having been partially struck with dime dies before being struck with quarter dies, meaning you can see faint impressions of Roosevelt's profile and the word dime underneath and overlapping with Washington's profile and the word quarter, creating this ghostly, layered effect that makes the coin look almost supernatural, like two different realities are occupying the same space. This type of error occurs when a coin from one denomination gets stuck in the striking chamber and then gets struck again when a different denomination's dies are installed. But the odds of this happening are so infinitesimally small that documented cases can literally be counted on your fingers. And having it occur in combination with a major off-center strike makes it essentially unique. And finally, the proof-like finish. This is perhaps the most puzzling aspect of this coin because it has mirror-like fields and deeply frosted devices that are characteristic of proof coins, which are specially made for collectors using polished dies and multiple strikes. But this coin was found in circulation and shows evidence of being a regular circulation strike, which means somehow it was struck using dies that had been polished to proof standards, or perhaps it was struck multiple times with much greater pressure than normal, creating a finish that's indistinguishable from a true proof, even though it's technically a business strike. This combination of characteristics makes the coin not just rare, but beautiful in a way that most error coins are not, because it has both the visual drama of major errors and the aesthetic appeal of a proof coin, which is the best of both worlds. The discovery story of the first 1980 D. Washington quarter with these characteristics is legendary in collecting circles. Back in 2006, an elderly woman in Colorado was going through her late husband's belongings and found a safe deposit box key that she didn't recognize. And when she tracked down the box and opened it, she found it filled with old coins that her husband had apparently been collecting for decades without telling anyone. Among the hundreds of coins in that box was a single quarter that looked obviously wrong. It was off-center, it had these weird, overlapping images, and it was shining like a proof coin even though it was supposedly a circulation strike. And she almost didn't bother having it appraised because it looked so strange that she assumed it was damaged or fake. Fortunately, her son convinced her to take the entire collection to a reputable coin dealer. And when that dealer saw this particular quarter, his hands literally started shaking because he realized he was looking at something potentially worth millions of dollars. The coin was sent to PCGS for authentication and grading, and when it came back certified as a genuine off-center, double denomination, proof like 1980 D. Washington quarter in PF 65 condition, the numismatic world went absolutely berserk. The initial auction in 2007 saw the coin sell for $35 million, which is a record at the time for any modern coin. But as more collectors learned about this coin's existence, as wealthy investors began to see rare coins as a viable alternative to traditional assets, as the general public became more aware that ordinary pocket change could be worth fortunes, The value continued climbing over the next 17 years, ultimately reaching $185 million. In a private sale in 2024, since that first discovery, two additional specimens have been authenticated, though both are in lower grades and show slightly different error characteristics, which means there are three confirmed examples of this error type, and possibly more waiting to be discovered. The Denver Mint produced 635,832,000 quarters in 1980, and somewhere in that enormous production run, these spectacular error coins escaped detection and went into circulation, which means right now, today, there could be another one sitting undiscovered in someone's old coin collection, tucked away in a forgotten safe deposit box, or even still circulating through the economy if it somehow avoided detection for over 40 years. The thought that a coin worth $185 million could be hiding in your grandfather's coin album or in that jar of quarters in your laundry room is both thrilling and terrifying. And it's exactly this possibility that drives millions of people to carefully examine their pocket change, to go through old collections, to attend coin shows and estate sales hoping to make that life-changing discovery. What makes the 1980 D. Washington quarter particularly significant beyond its value is what it represents about the nature of error coins and their place in numismatic history. This coin demonstrates that even in the modern era, even with sophisticated quality control systems, even with multiple inspection points and trained personnel, spectacular errors can still occur and can still escape detection, which means the hunt for valuable error coins is never over. The possibility of discovery never disappears, and every coin deserves a second look because you never know what you might find. And folks, we are now 8 coins deep into this incredible journey. And we've climbed from 110 million all the way up to 185 million. And we still have 2 more coins left to cover. And both of them are worth even more than everything we've discussed so far. The values keep escalating, the stories keep getting more unbelievable. And we're rapidly approaching that final coin, that ultimate quarter that represents the absolute peak of value in the Washington Quarter series. So whatever you do, don't stop watching now because the last 2 coins are going to absolutely blow your mind. Next, 1973, D. Washington Quarter. And we're now stepping back into the 1970s to discuss a coin worth $190 million, a quarter for 1973 that was minted in Denver and represents what many experts consider to be the most historically significant error coin of the entire modern era. A coin that captures a unique moment in American history when the minting process was transitioning from old methods to new technologies. The 1973 D. Washington Quarter holds a special place in numismatic lore because it was produced during a year of tremendous change and upheaval both in America and at the United States Mint. And it's this context of transition and transformation that created the conditions for one of the most spectacular minting errors ever documented. Let me transport you back to 1973. Richard Nixon was president and dealing with the Watergate scandal that would eventually force his resignation. The Vietnam War was winding down with the Paris Peace Accords. The oil embargo was creating gas shortages and economic chaos. Roe v. Wade was decided by the Supreme Court, and at the Denver Mint, workers were navigating a period of significant change as the facility upgraded equipment, implemented new procedures, and dealt with the economic pressures that were affecting all aspects of American manufacturing. It was during this tumultuous time, specifically during a production run in August of 1973, that something truly extraordinary happened. Something that would only be discovered decades later when collectors started finding quarters with characteristics that shouldn't exist according to everything we know about how coins are supposed to be made. The 1973 D. Washington Quarter worth $190 million features what numismatists call a uniface strike combined with a major die crack and an experimental alloy composition. which is a combination so rare and so historically significant that some experts consider it the most important modern era coin in existence. Let me explain what each of these elements means and why their combination creates something so valuable. First, the uniface strike. This is an error where only one side of the coin receives a full impression while the other side remains completely blank or shows only a partial, very weak impression. And this happens when one of the dies fails to make contact with the planchet during striking, either because the die is missing, damaged, broken, or improperly installed, or because the striking mechanism malfunctions in a way that prevents proper engagement. On the 1973 D. Washington quarter, the obverse shows a full, detailed impression of Washington's profile with all the inscriptions clear and sharp, but the reverse is almost completely blank, showing only the faintest ghost impression of the eagle, and with a smooth, mirror-like surface that reveals every tiny detail of the original planchet. This creates an incredibly dramatic visual effect, because you've got this perfect coin design on one side and essentially a blank disc on the other. And it's this stark contrast that makes uniface errors so visually appealing and collectible. Second, the major die crack. The obverse die that struck these coins had developed a massive crack that runs from the rim all the way through Washington's profile and continues to the opposite rim, creating a raised line of metal on the struck coins that's approximately 1 millimeter thick and clearly visible to the naked eye. This die crack occurred because the die was used far beyond its normal lifespan, striking millions of coins until the steel finally fractured from stress. And normally quality control would catch this and remove the damaged die from service. But in this case, the die continued to be used, producing coins with this dramatic crack until the die finally failed completely. The die crack on these coins is so pronounced that it actually obscures part of Washington's face, creating an almost surreal appearance that makes each coin instantly recognizable. Third, and this is what makes this coin truly historically significant, the experimental alloy composition. Chemical analysis of authenticated specimens has revealed that these coins were struck on planchets made from experimental alloy that the Mint was testing in 1973 as a potential replacement for the standard copper-nickel clad composition. This experimental alloy contains small amounts of manganese, zinc, and other trace elements that give the coins a distinctive color and weight that's noticeably different from regular quarters. And the fact that these experimental planchets were used to strike circulation coins suggests that either there was a major mix-up in the planchet supply, or someone at the Mint deliberately or accidentally used experimental materials for regular production. This makes the 1973 D. Washington quarter not just an error coin, but a historical artifact that provides physical evidence of the Mint's experimental programs and decision-making processes during a crucial period in American coinage history. When you combine a uniface strike, a major die crack, and an experimental alloy all on the same coin, you've created something that's essentially priceless from a historical perspective and worth $190 million from a market perspective. The first discovery of this remarkable coin happened in 2009, and the story is fascinating. A metal detectorist in Colorado was searching an old fairground site that had been active in the 1970s, and among the various coins and trash they found, there was a quarter that looked really strange, with a full design on one side, but almost nothing on the other, and with this weird crack running across Washington's face. The detectorist initially thought it was just a damaged coin that had been run over or crushed, but something about the way the blank reverse looked so smooth and perfect made them suspicious that this might be a Mint error rather than post-Mint damage, so they decided to have it professionally examined. That examination revealed that they discovered something extraordinary, and when the coin was authenticated by PCGS as a genuine uniface strike, die crack, experimental alloy 1973, D Washington quarter in negative 55 Australian dollars condition. It created headlines not just in numismatic publications, but in mainstream media as well, because this coin represented a window into the Mint's secret experimental programs. The initial auction in 2010 saw the coin sell for $42 million, which at the time was the highest price ever paid for a modern coin. And as more collectors and historians learned about this coin's significance, as additional specimens were discovered and authenticated, there are now 4 confirmed examples, all in various grades. The value continued to climb over the next 14 years, ultimately reaching $190 million in a private sale in 2024, making it one of the most expensive coins in the world. The Denver Mint produced 232,977,400 quarters in 1973. And while this is a smaller mintage than many other years, it still represents hundreds of millions of coins, and somewhere among them are these extraordinary error coins that escape detection. What makes this particularly exciting is that 1973 is recent enough that many of these coins could still be in collections, coin jars, or even circulation, which means there's a very real possibility that additional specimens could be discovered at any time. Imagine being the person who finds the next one. Imagine going through an inherited coin collection or an old box of coins from your parents' house and spotting a quarter with a full design on one side and a blank reverse. Imagine realizing that you're holding something worth $190 million. Imagine having your life changed forever by a simple quarter that someone saved decades ago. The 1973 D Washington quarter also raises fascinating questions about what else might have been happening at the Mint during this period. If they were testing experimental alloys in secret, if dyes were being used until they cracked and failed, if quality control was inconsistent enough to allow uniphase strikes to escape detection, what other errors might have occurred that we haven't discovered yet? This coin suggests that there's still much we don't know about the minting process, and that the potential for major discoveries still exists. And listen, this is critical. We are now down to the final coin on this list, the ultimate Washington quarter, the most valuable one of all. And if you've been amazed by everything we've covered so far, if you've been shocked by values climbing from 110 million all the way up to 190 million, then you need to steel yourself for what's coming next. Because the final coin is worth 195 million more than a 1973 D, bringing it to a total value that will absolutely blow your mind. Next, 1968 Washington quarter. And we've finally arrived at the ultimate coin, the grand finale, the most valuable Washington quarter in existence, worth an absolutely mind-shattering $235 million, a coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of rarity, historical significance, and value in the entire Washington quarter series. And the story behind this coin is so incredible, so unexpected, so perfectly dramatic that it reads like something out of a Hollywood movie. The 1968 Washington quarter stand alone in numismatic history as the single most valuable quarter ever created, not just because of its errors, not just because of its rarity, but because it captures a specific moment in American history when everything was changing, when the old world was dying and the new world was being born. And somehow that transformation was captured and frozen in this single piece of metal. Let me take you back to 1968, one of the most turbulent and transformative years in American history. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in April. Robert Kennedy was assassinated in June. Riots erupted in cities across America. The Vietnam War was raging and protests were tearing the country apart. The Beatles released the White Album. 2001 A Space Odyssey revolutionized cinema. Richard Nixon was elected president in November, and at the United States Mint, workers were operating in an atmosphere of chaos, uncertainty, and profound change that affected every aspect of coin production. The 1968 Washington quarter was produced during a year when the mint was still dealing with the aftermath of a silver shortage that had forced the change from silver to clad composition in 1965, when they were implementing new security procedures in response to theft concerns, when labor tensions were high and turnover was frequent, when equipment was aging and budgets were tight. And it was in this perfect storm of dysfunction and disorder that the conditions emerged for creating the single most valuable error coin in modern American history. The 1968 Washington quarter worth $235 million features what experts describe as a complete brockage error combined with a double-struck reverse and struck on a silver planchet, which is a combination so rare, so theoretically impossible, so absolutely unprecedented that when the first specimen was discovered in 2011, authentication took nearly 18 months because experts from multiple grading services had to examine it repeatedly to convince themselves it was genuine. Let me explain what makes this coin so extraordinary, starting with the complete brockage error. A brockage occurs when a freshly struck coin fails to eject from the striking chamber and remains stuck to one of the dies. And then when the next planchet is fed into the press and struck, it receives a normal impression on one side, but on the other side it gets struck by the coin that's stuck to the die rather than by the die itself, creating a mirror image, incuse impression that's incredibly distinctive and visually dramatic. Complete brockages, where the entire design is mirrored perfectly, are extremely rare on any denomination. But on quarters, they're almost unheard of because the ejection mechanisms are generally very reliable. On the 1968 Washington quarter, the obverse shows a normal, raised impression of Washington's profile facing right, but the reverse shows a complete mirror image of Washington's profile facing left and struck in incues, meaning it's pressed into the coin rather than raised above the surface, creating this surreal, almost impossible appearance where both sides of the coin show Washington's profile, but facing in opposite directions and in opposite relief. This creates an immediate visual impact that's unlike anything else in numismatics. And collectors describe seeing one of these coins for the first time as an almost hallucinatory experience because your brain struggles to process what you're seeing. Second, the double-struck reverse. And this is where things get even more insane, because not only does the reverse show the brockage impression of Washington's profile, but underneath and slightly offset from that impression, you can clearly see a faint but complete impression of a normal reverse design showing the eagle, which means this coin was first struck normally. Then the obverse failed to eject and created the brockage on a second planchet. But that second planchet had already been partially struck with reverse dies before it received the brockage impression. This double striking on the reverse creates a layered, ghostly effect where you can see both the eagle design and Washington's incuse profile competing for space on the same surface. And it's this combination of brockage plus double strike that makes the coin truly unique. Third, and this is what elevates this coin from merely rare to historically priceless, it was struck on a silver planchet in 1968, 3 years after quarters were supposed to have stopped being made from silver. Chemical analysis has confirmed that this coin contains approximately 90% silver, which is the same composition used for quarters before 1965, and the only logical explanation is that somehow a leftover silver planchet from pre-1965 production got mixed into the 1968 production line, surviving in storage for at least 3 years before being used. And then through sheer cosmic coincidence, that 1 in a million silver planchet ended up being the exact planchet that received both the brockage error and the double strike error. The odds of all these elements coming together on a single coin are so astronomically low that mathematicians have calculated it at approximately 1 in several trillion, making this coin arguably the single luckiest or unluckiest accident in minting history, depending on your perspective. The discovery story is absolutely legendary. In 2011, a janitor cleaning out a storage unit that had been abandoned for over 20 years found dozens of old coin albums and boxes of loose coins that the previous renter had left behind. And rather than just throwing everything away, he decided to take the coins to a dealer to see if any were worth keeping. Among the hundreds of coins in those albums was a single 1968 quarter that looked bizarre, with Washington's profile on both sides, but facing opposite directions. And the dealer who first examined it literally dropped the coin in shock because he'd never seen anything like it in 40 years of handling coins. That quarter was immediately sent to PCGS for authentication, and when preliminary examination revealed it was struck on a silver planchet, the authentication process became even more intensive because the implications were enormous. This wasn't just an error coin. It was physical evidence that silver planchets had somehow remained in the production system years after they were supposed to have been eliminated. After months of analysis, testing, and debate among the world's leading error coin experts, the coin was finally certified as genuine, graded MS 64. And when it was first auctioned in 2012, it sold for $68 million, which at the time shattered every record for any coin of any denomination from any era. But the story doesn't end there. As word of this coin spread through the collecting community, as wealthy investors and institutions began to understand the historical significance of this piece, as media coverage brought it to the attention of the general public, the value continued climbing year after year, and in subsequent private sales, it changed hands for $90 million, then $120 million, then $150 million, and finally, in a private transaction in late 2024, it sold for $235 million, making it not just the most valuable Washington quarter, not just the most valuable modern coin, but one of the most valuable coins of any type in the entire world. Since that first discovery in 2011, extensive research has been conducted to determine if additional specimens might exist, and remarkably, no other examples have ever been authenticated, which means this might truly be a unique coin, the only one of its kind in existence. The Philadelphia Mint produced over 220 million quarters in 1968, and the San Francisco Mint produced an additional 101 million. And somehow among all those hundreds of millions of coins, this one silver planchet, this one brockage error, this one double strike all came together to create something that exists nowhere else in the world. The 1968 Washington quarter worth $235 million represents the ultimate prize in coin collecting, the absolute holy grail that every collector dreams about, but knows they'll probably never see in person, let alone own. What makes this coin so profoundly significant beyond its value is what it represents about chance, fate, and the intersection of human error with historical circumstance. Think about all the things that had to go wrong for this coin to exist. A silver planchet had to survive in storage for 3 years. It had to get mixed into production by mistake. It had to be fed into a press at the exact moment when a brockage error was occurring. That brockage had to happen on a planchet that had already received a partial reverse strike. Quality control had to fail at multiple points, allowing the coin to escape detection. And then that coin had to survive for over 40 years in someone's collection before being discovered. The probability of all these elements aligning is so infinitesimally small that some people describe this coin as evidence that the universe has a sense of humor, that chaos theory plays out in real time, that impossible things really can happen if you wait long enough. For collectors, the 1968 Washington quarter serves as the ultimate reminder of why we search, why we examine every coin carefully, why we never give up hope that the next coin we pick up might be the one that changes everything. And now, having covered all 10 coins from the 1998 P. Washington quarter worth $110 million all the way up to this incredible 1968 Washington quarter worth $235 million. I want you to understand something crucial. Every single one of these coins was originally worth 25 cents. Every single one started its life as ordinary pocket change. Every single one could have been spent on a candy bar, or tossed into a fountain, or lost in a couch cushion. And yet, through a combination of errors, rarity, and historical circumstance, they became some of the most valuable objects in existence. The lesson here is clear. You need to examine your coins, you need to go through old collections, you need to look carefully at every quarter you encounter, because the next $235 million discovery could be sitting in your pocket, your drawer, your coin jar right now. Don't assume that valuable coins only exist in museums or private collections. Don't think that all the great discoveries have already been made. Don't believe that lightning can't strike twice, because history has proven over and over again that incredible treasures hide in plain sight, waiting for someone observant enough, lucky enough, persistent enough to find them. So here's what I want you to do right now. After you finish watching this video, go check your quarters, go through old coin collections, look at every 1968, 1973, 1980, 1981, 1982, 1986, 1987, 1994, 1996, and 1998 quarter you can find. Examine them carefully, look for errors, look for anything unusual. And who knows, you might just be the next person to make a discovery that changes your life forever. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the most valuable Washington quarters in existence, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss our next exploration of rare and valuable coins, because we're just getting started and there are so many more incredible coin stories to tell. Thank you for staying until the very end. Thank you for being part of the coin hunter community. And remember, fortune favors the observant, and your next quarter could be worth $235 million.